yesterday we talked about the press the Catalan press basically, because there's a lot of talk about where Erling Haaland is going. So we talked about that side of things, because if you're reading your newspapers up in that side of Spain, this is what you will be reading. But if you're reading them in Madrid, you'll see this week that Diario AS said Haaland has said yes, but right now that he doesn't want to wait, but he does want to go to Real Madrid. What's the latest that you've heard on this, Gab?
Well, a couple of things here. Obviously, Mino Raiola, who looks after Erling Haaland, hasn't been well. He's recovering. So I don't think there's actually that much that's necessarily going on in terms of negotiations for the future or whatnot. There's no question, I think, that Erling Haaland is going to leave in the summer, because it's in his interest to leave in the summer, because he's got that release clause. Were he to extend the deal or move the summer after that, and there was some kind of transfer fee involved, then it would likely be a lot more than his release clause, and that money would go to, or the difference between those two sums would go to Borussia Dortmund, and not to him, and not to his agent, not to his dad, and the people around him. So whether it's Real Madrid or Barcelona, I still think Barcelona have a whole bunch of priorities. They have a whole. They're still in a big hole. They're digging themselves out of it financially, but to go and to commit those kinds of sums now, all of a sudden, when there are other areas in the side that they want to address, I don't know. I think it would be really, really pushing the boat out, unless they were to sacrifice maybe one of their players, one of the young stars, to raise money.
And yet there does seem to be belief in the Barcelona camp from the reports that we're seeing. They are looking more of an attractive option for a player like Haaland. Xavi's in there. There's young players now that are exciting and attracting. And then on the other side, you've got Real Madrid and maybe signing Kylian Mbappe and the stars that they've got there. If you were Erling Haaland and you had to pick between the two, where would you go?
Wow. First of all, I'd be very happy if I were Erling Haaland for all sorts of different reasons. Oh, man, this is a tough one. I would say I would go to Barcelona. And the reason you just mentioned it, it's a youth movement going on at Barcelona that is not quite there at Real Madrid. And Real Madrid, for all the success that they're having currently in La Liga, and potentially they're going to go on and win the league, you also have the truth, and this is factual information. This is not me making it up. This is not for a matter of opinion or discussion, is that their stars are getting older. And you're still depending on Luka Modric. You're still depending on Toni Kroos. You're still depending on Karim Benzema. So really the only young star that you have out there is Vinicius Jr. and sometimes Rodrigo, if you consider Rodrigo a star. That's not quite the case at Barcelona. The challenge, though, at Barcelona, and Gab just alluded to it, is while we are excited about all these young players, at some point, one of these young players that is playing so very well is going to say, I like to start every game because I'm good enough to be starting every game, and I'm sitting over here. But how are you going to keep all of these people together when you don't have the money to do so? How do you keep all this talent together and continue to be this young, up-and-coming team if you're struggling financially? That's a reality for Barcelona that is going to come to a head within the next couple of seasons or so. And that's, I think, where there's going to be an issue. You're going to have to make decisions in terms of what you invest and what you're willing to sell. Those decisions for Barcelona are going to be the key that would attract a player like Erling Haaland or not.
Gab?
I agree with what Ali says, and look, but I also want to point out, I appreciate they're coming off 3 straight wins and some really, really impressive performances. But maybe we pump the brakes a tiny bit, because there is a core of young talent there, undeniably. But you also have a bunch of other holes in your team that you need to plug, because at right back you have Dani Alves or Serginho Dest. Obviously, that's not a long-term issue. You've got Eric Garcia there. You've got Gerard Piqué. These are situations where you've got players who are either going to be older. You've got Sergio Busquets still there. Either players who are getting older or players who maybe aren't that good. And I think this is something that Haaland would want to consider as well. You could flip it around, what you say about Real Madrid, that say, okay, you forgot Kylian Mbappe, who of course Real Madrid fans take for granted is on his way. All of a sudden, Mbappe, Vinicius, Haaland front line looks pretty tasty and pretty young. You've got Camavinga and Valverde who will be eased into the midfield. And there's an enormous amount of free agents on the market this summer, as we know, from Pogba to Rudiger. And then you can go and spend some money there too. So, I think Real Madrid can be retooled pretty quickly. So, look, it's a big decision for him. Hopefully, it'll be primarily a footballing decision that he makes. And I wouldn't rule out, too, that there could be other clubs from outside La Liga in the mix. In fact, I'd be shocked.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.